I'm Ina de Vries. I'm a counseling psychologist and a wellness coach. Welcome to Well at Life, where we focus on your overall well-being so that you can do well at life. And our topic for this video is your occupational wellness. And I really want to focus on two areas that has a huge impact on your job satisfaction, your relationship with your co-workers, and your overall well-being. And that is conflict resolution and how to set good boundaries in your workplace. Now let's start off with conflict. Now conflict can be defined as any situation where your views and interests are in direct opposition to someone else's. And this can happen for different reasons. It can be that you have different points of view or interest from someone else. Or it can be that you have different communication styles. And this can lead to misunderstandings or to the other person taking your words and what you want to say out of context. And that can lead to conflict. Or it can also be that you have different working styles and different work ethics, or that you have different backgrounds, different upbringings, and different personalities. It can also be that you have undefined work roles and job descriptions, and this can lead to specific requirements and specific needs that are not communicated clearly, they're not being met. And this can lead to a lot of conflict. So why do we need to resolve conflict as quickly and effectively as possible? Because it can lead to a cycle of negative consequences. Because now you have this conflict situation, and as it lingers on and festers on, you get more and more co-workers that weren't initially involved in this conflict situation now being drawn in. And this can then lead to a situation where people start taking sides. Or you can have someone who just withdraws or disengage from the work environment. So what this does is it splits up your work teams. And now you have these different opposing groups, which of course is very detrimental to your productivity and the morale within the groups, because now so much mental and physical energy goes into these conflict situations instead of working together towards a common goal or a target. And this can, in the long run, really be very negative in terms of your whole work environment. And this is what you need to look out for. Individually, yes, within conflict with another person, or managers and unit managers also have to look at this and manage this very carefully and effectively. Now, I have linked the conflict mode questionnaire for you below. So my suggestion would be that you stop the video now, pause it, first get your hands on that conflict mode questionnaire, fill it in so that you can identify your conflict mode animal. You will see what I mean when you go through the questionnaire. And then you can watch the rest of the video, because we are going to discuss these different conflict modes in more detail. And then I'm going to give you tips on how you can resolve conflict that you have within your work environment. We're going to look at the conflict modes in more detail, and we're starting off with competing, which is also called the shark. Now, this is an assertive and uncooperative stance. It's when an individual pursues his or her own concerns over this of other people. And this is a power-orientated mode in which you use whatever power seems appropriate to win your position. It means that you are standing up for your rights or defending a position which you believe is correct or simply trying to win. Now, using competing is effective in situations where being decisive and action-focused is vital and the right course is clear. Also for important issues when unpopular decisions must be implemented, or when conflict resolution is urgent to restore productivity. Or it can also be used to protect oneself against people who take advantage of non-competitive behavior. The drawback is that it may cause resentment within a work group and hostility towards the person using this mode. Next up is avoiding, which is also called the turtle. Now this is unassertive and uncooperative. The person neither pursues his own concerns nor those of another individual. Thus, he is not dealing with conflict at all. Avoiding might take the form of diplomatically sidestepping an issue, or postponing an issue until a better time, or simply withdrawing from a threatening situation. Now, turtle is effective when the issue is relatively trivial, or when the conflict is secondary to something more important. It can also be used when a confrontation will hurt a working relationship, or someone needs a time to cool off. It can also be used when it's important to gather more information before reaching a decision, or when others can resolve the issue more effectively. Then we go on to collaborating. Now, collaborating is also called the OWL, and this is both assertive and cooperative. It's a complete opposite of avoiding. Now, the OWL style can be used when you attempt to work with others to find some solution that will fully satisfy their concerns. It means digging into an issue to pinpoint the underlying needs and wants of the two individuals. Collaborating between two persons might take the form of exploring a disagreement to learn from each other's insights or try to find a creative solution to an interpersonal problem. Now, the OWL is effective when it's important that both sides be integrated, or that when you want to learn more and fully understand the other person's view, to merge different perspectives, insights, and work styles, and to gain commitment from all parties through consensus. It's also very useful for working through hard feelings that have interfered with interpersonal relationships. Next one that we're talking about is our compromising style. Now, compromising is a moderate style in both assertiveness and cooperativeness. And the objective of compromising is to find some expedient, mutual, agreeable solution that partially satisfies both parties. And this falls between our competing style and our accommodating style. So compromising gives up more than competing, but less than accommodating. Likewise, it addresses the issue more directly than avoiding, but does not explore it in such depth as collaborating. In some situations, compromising might mean splitting the difference between two positions. So, yes, compromising is very effective when complex issues are at stake and finding middle ground is important, or when all parties are equal in power and have strong preference for opposing decisions. Or it can be used where time constraints exist and resources are limited. It can also be when the goals are more important as well as the situation is more valued. And then our last one is definitely accommodating, which is the teddy bear. Now, the teddy bear is unassertive and cooperative, and it's the opposite of competing. So when you are in accommodating mode, the individual neglects his own concerns to satisfy the concerns of the other person. So there is an element of self-sacrifice in this mode. Accommodating might take the form of selfless generosity or charity, or obeying another person's order when you prefer not to, or yielding to another person's point of view. Now, accommodating or the teddy bear works well in situations where building and perceiving the relationship is more important than winning, or in situations where the issue is of low importance, or to temporarily settle a complex issue so that you can restore harmony. It shows reasonability and it shows agreeability. So it can also be used when competing would have produced a negative outcome. The negative of this style of being accommodating might mean that it leaves you feeling resentful, or like you're holding a grudge, or like you're playing the victim role. But we have to remember that all conflict styles can be useful and effective. One style is not necessarily better than another, and that most people make use of different modes at different times. So, although you might prefer one mode because it feels the best to you, you can switch between modes. Your personality, upbringing, and cultural influences also play a role in which mode you use it the most. Tips of how you can resolve conflict that you have with a co-worker. Well, you will know me by now and know that I always come back to communication. To me, that is key in any situation, in any interpersonal conflict that might arise. So the first thing to do is to talk it out. So you approach the person that you have conflict with and you arrange an appropriate time and place where you can meet and where you can have an uninterrupted discussion of this whole situation. And then you must, when you start the conversation with this person, you must stick to the specifics. So don't go off on a tangent and, just stick to what happened, what the situation was. And don't start your discussion with when you do. Because this will immediately put the other person on, the defensive. Because you are sounding confrontational when you do that. So rather, start your discussion with when this happened. And then just stick to the specifics of what happened within that situation. So leave the emotion and the personality clashes out of it. So no naming, blaming, or shaming. You just stick to what happened. And then you can follow it up with an I message. So you go into using I language. So you can start your discussion and say, when this happened, I felt, or I behaved, or I responded in this and this and this way. So you don't come across as, jumping in with an accusation or, blaming the other person or naming the other person's personality or their behavior. You keep it to specifics within the situation and you keep it to what happened with you, how it affected you. And then once you get this going on, then you can really start listening to the other person and listen with the intent to understand, not just to gear up so you can have a comeback, because we all tend to do that. While the other person is busy, you are so, you immediately start poking holes in this person's discussion, and you can't wait to get your 2 cents in. But leave that. Do not interrupt. Listen with the intent of understanding, because there's nothing wrong with your hearing. You can hear the person, but there might be a problem with your listening skills. So you need to work on that. So just listen to what this other person has to say, and then you can repeat what they said, or you can paraphrase it just to make sure that you understood correctly. And once you have set that positive tone now for the discussion, and you've sent the message that you're really there to understand and to listen, then the two of you can start identifying areas where you do agree. And you will be surprised at how much commonalities and agreements there can be within any conflict situation. So try to get the discussion onto what do we agree on, and not get stuck in what do we disagree on. Because once you've set that positive tone, then you can say, okay, we have so much in common, and it sounds like we're working towards the same goal and we want the same things. But there are still areas that we do disagree. So how can we resolve this? And then you can go into brainstorming and really talking and discussing and hashing out what it is that you can do to resolve this conflict. And a tip for you would be to write it down, because that has 2 benefits. First off, it really makes whatever you discuss tangible. You're literally putting it on paper, you're putting it on the table. And the second thing is that it will hold both of you accountable, because now you've put it on paper. You have put your conflict resolution plans on paper, so no one can back out and say, no, but this was never discussed, or go into that whole he said, she said thing. So just a tip from my side. So yes, these are just a few of the things that you can do. It's very basic, but it's very effective. Right, let's talk boundaries and why we need to set good and clearly marked boundaries within our workplace. You can be a diligent worker and you can have a good work ethic without having to be perfect, without having to say yes to everything, without being available for everything and everyone 24/7. You are a human being, so you need time off, you need time to relax and recuperate and just have a personal life. And I know sometimes boundaries can be very difficult because you don't want to be disliked, or you don't want to come across as being obstructive or not communicating or cooperating. You don't want to seem like you're not a good team player. But the bottom line is that the clearer you are in your boundaries between your personal life and your professional life, the much more effective you will be, the better your job performance would be, and the better your work ethic and your ethical accountability would be. So that's why it's so important. Now let's look at some of the signs that you need to firm up your work-related boundaries. The first one is that you feel unsure, or you feel uncomfortable to say no to anyone, and you feel guilty because you think that you've let them down. Then it can be that you always tired and anxious and irritable, and you don't have a clear reason for it. It can also be that you are doubting yourself and you're doubting the work-related decisions that you make. So then you rather step back and delegate it to someone else. Or you take too much responsibility. You feel guilty for a co-worker's negligence or their bad work performance, because you feel in some way it should have been your responsibility, or you should have watched out for your colleague. It can also be that you feel unappreciated, or that you feel that you are putting so much in and not getting out what you think you should. But in the end, any type of boundary that we set within our interpersonal relationships is really up to us. You have to set the boundary first in your head. You have to be clear on where do my responsibility end and yours start. Where am I in the situation? What is mine to own and what is yours to own? So that you have to get clear in your head. Now, how do you set a boundary? Well, first off, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but first off, communication. Communication is really vital in any interpersonal relationship, but especially in setting boundaries. So be assertive, friendly but firm, and state your boundaries clearly and concisely. So don't backtrack or change your mind, and because you really need to say what you mean and mean what you say, because in that you build your own integrity and your trustworthiness, because your managers, your co-workers, your colleagues, whatever you want to call them, they know that when you say something and you say you're going to do something, they can rely on you and you're trustworthy. So yes, keep your professional boundaries by communicating very clearly, very concisely. When you're talking to your managers and you want to discuss problems with them, keep it on a professional level and keep it within the specifics of your job. So try, and I know it can be difficult, but try to keep emotion out of it. Try to keep personal details, personal things that isn't related directly to the problem. Try to keep that outside the office or outside your workplace. Then the second thing, and this is very important, is to stop the gossip train in its tracks. Because not only do you have to be very clear on how you communicate to your co-workers, but you also have to be very clear about what you communicate. And really, gossiping is not part of a professional boundary. It's not part of your workplace. It doesn't have any place there. So stop the urge to gossip, because then it's much easier to protect your boundaries and you are not blurring the lines between your professional life and your personal life. Because if you don't do that, you know that tomorrow someone is going to gossip about you, and that is not going to feel so good. So resist the urge. keep your personal life personal and your professional life professional. Then, of course, when you do set your boundaries, you also have to know what you're going to do when that boundary is overstepped. So what is your reaction going to be? What are you going to say? And it's better to keep it very clear, but in simple terms. So you can say something like, I'm not comfortable with that, or that doesn't suit me, or that doesn't work for me. Because that sends a very friendly but firm message to a co-worker that your boundary has been overstepped. Or if someone comes to you and asks you to do something that you are a bit uncomfortable with, or you're unsure whether this will impact your day-to-day job, you are unsure of whether you have time to do it, or whether you have an inclination to do it, or whether it's in your job description, rather than trying to be likable and trying to look as if you're eager for anything, rather say, let me think about that and I'll come back to you. Because then that buys you time to think about the request, think about how you can slot it into your work, think of the impact that it might have on your personal life, and then you can come back to the person and say, you know what, I thought about it, I can do this and this and this, but that will, the rest I cannot do, or whatever. You also don't have to over-explain or defend your professional boundaries. Just state it clearly and concisely. Respect is a two-way street. So if you want others to respect you and to treat you with respect, then obviously you have to do the same. And that means that you also have to set boundaries for yourself and for other people on how you communicate and how you show respect. So that's something to think about. And then the last one, which is to me one of the most important ones, is that you set boundaries at home as well. That you really have a good and clear transition between work and home. Because burnout happens when you cannot disengage from your work day. When you have trouble doing that by either bringing work home, or you are thinking about work-related problems while you're at home. You are ruminating, you are worrying, you are not really fully present when you're at home. There you really have to set a good boundary that once you're home, you're home. You're not at work, so you can either switch off your phone, or you can screen calls, or you can set up a message on your phone that you will be available tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock or whatever. Or, you know, you can invite the person to leave a voice note and then you can listen to it the following day. Because if you don't do that, by setting boundaries when you're at work about your personal life and when you're at home about your work life, you will find that the lines get blurred, and in the end you are burnt out, you are ineffective, your job performance suffers for it. So yes, very important to have that in place. So yes, I would love to hear your comments. I would love to hear how you set boundaries. I would love to hear about any tips that you can give the rest of us on what you do to set good home boundaries as well. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of the upcoming videos. Until we chat again, keep well and keep safe.